Hello everyone, thank you for coming today. And first, I'm really glad to be here, and we are more than expected actually. So I just want to start by introducing myself. I'm Samuel. I'm a software engineer at Algolia, and especially in the crawler team. So that's the topic of today. I'm going to talk about the crawler and the challenges we face at Algolia with crawling, and present a few solutions we found to be working actually. But first, let me start with a bit of context, because I saw most of you know Algolia, and so you probably know that we have a lot of API clients with most of mainstream languages like JavaScript, PHP, Java, .NET, whatever. So, sorry, why do we need a crawler anyway, if developer can push their data to Algolia directly? The main issue we had, a customer went talk to us and ask us, do you have a way to index a website without calling the API, because he didn't have the resources to put on a backend or call Algolia itself. So we built a POC with JavaScript 2 years ago, and we put it online. They use it. They were happy. We were happy, so that's it. There is one issue, one thing with this is that we realize Algolia did not like HTML. Algolia only eats JSON, and we had to work around this limitation. And after a few months of work, we realized the power we had on our end and quickly iterate on the product to make a full dedicated crawler for our customer. So now, 2 years after this event, we have now a crawler that crawls millions of pages every day on hundreds of websites and index HTML, but also complex documents like Word or spreadsheet, PDF, also with external data, with analytics and spreadsheet, everything. We recently have more interest thanks to Google and the way it's killing all its products. They killed GSA, and customers were left in the blank, in the wild, and they were searching for a solution. What is GSA? Is Google Search Appliance. They were build this product for customer, big enterprise customer, to have their own Google index in their website. So they were actually buying one machine, and they had a custom Google search engine. So those customers wanted to replace this, and we built a crawler to help them. To help even more, we built a dedicated UI that it's not on the dashboard, it's a custom UI that we built for this customer to make them crawl their website, configure it, monitor it, write their own extraction code, and configure everything they can. So it's a really big product, but it's only for enterprise customer for the moment. I'm not going to dig into details because it's already a bit. The code is 99% JavaScript and with Node.js. We are running on Google Cloud and especially on Kubernetes for the scalability. So now, with this context, I can start with the challenges. And I'm going to start with this clickbait title, Crawling is Easy. You may think I'm wrong, because now you're probably doing crawling intensively, but when you start, crawling is pretty easy. You just have to have a bunch of curl or command line. You can even do crawl with spreadsheets, actually. So there is nothing really hard to do at first. But once you start to scale, you need to think about, you can DDoS a website pretty easily. You can have a lot of money to pay because it costs a lot of bandwidth and CPU. You have to pay attention to website bugs, actually. I'm going to talk about that later, but it can be really painful. You have to deal with a lot of data, gigabytes or terabytes of data. You have to deal and comply with web standards that have been there for decades, and they are complicated. Also, scalability issue. We will have a talk about that, I think. Anyway, 100 of other topics. And this is easy, right? Now, obviously, crawling is hard, and especially at scale. The first topic I want to dig into, and the challenge we had at Algolia, is going beyond HTML. What I mean by that is HTML is okay. You can curl it, you have the information, you parse it, and you're done. The problem is that the web is not like that. You may think it is, but when the web is more like an IKEA store, where you go to the store, you want a bed, and you end up with the bed, but also with a lamp and a cactus and everything else. With the web, when crawling, you have the same issue. You want HTML and you end up with PowerPoint, PDF, spreadsheets, XML, RSS, CSS, images, and stuff like that. I'm going to focus on two topics, rendering JavaScript, because it's the most painful one, and also because it's 2019 and every website is made with JavaScript. Fortunately, we have headless browser. You can run Chrome and Firefox in a server and control it with an API. So it's pretty easy and easy to start and easy to put in place. We choose to use Rendertron at Algolia at scale. Rendertron is a tool, open source tool made by Google, which is also made on top of Puppeteer, also made by Google. And it's pretty easy because it's an image. You just have to put it on a Docker or Kubernetes, in like our case, and it runs pretty easily. You just call it, it will render the JavaScript, and 10 seconds later, you have a page. You don't have to deal with resources, fetching the data, computing the JavaScript, and stuff like that. So what is the challenge in this? Well, when you think about it, when you open a Chrome or Firefox, you have 10, 20 tabs, even more, and you see your computer screaming and burning, your fan is spinning a lot. We have the same problem. We have a lot of computer that is burning a lot of power and CPUs. Actually, we are running thousands of pages, sometimes per minute, and it's costing a lot. It's cost a lot of money and CPU. So it's not the only problem we have. It leaks a lot of memory. As you can see, we are struggling to keep up. And thankfully, Kubernetes is really helpful for that. It helps keeping the stack clean and always almost normal. There is also big issues with slowness. A single page, even the most simple website, takes seconds to execute. And a JavaScript page has to we know JavaScript is rendered when there is no CPU or request call. So it almost never happens because you always have advertising, Google Analytics tracking, JavaScript call, WebSocket, and stuff like that. So Rendertron is actually killing the page after 10 seconds. So that's why we have an average of 10 seconds per page. For the next, to solve this issue, we started creating our own stack on top of Puppeteer, not reinventing the whole stack, but we are also improving a lot by adding this small thing, which is an ad blocker. It might be super dumb, but when you render JavaScript and you add an ad blocker, we basically gain 50% performance. And we are going from 10 seconds to 5 seconds in average. So it's pretty cool and it works well. The second topics I want to talk about in going beyond HTML is indexing non-semantic documents. It might not be really clear what I mean by that, but it's simply indexing words and PDF and PowerPoint, RSS, and stuff like that. What I mean by non-semantic is that HTML has a sense of semantic. You can have div that have meaning, headers, specific parts that you understand and you can parse pretty easily. A PDF is simply an image, so good luck with that. Fortunately, there is also open source packages, and we choose to use Tika, which is made by Apache, and it works exactly the same as Rendertron. You just put it in a VM, it exposes you an endpoint, and you're good with it. The problem is that it renders an HTML that is almost good, not really great, and the relevancy is not perfect. For example, here we have a PDF, which is a single paragraph. For a spreadsheet, you only have tables, and for Word, you only have no hierarchy or whatsoever. So it's almost unusable. You have to have a lot of post-processing, and it's a hard topic to master. So all in all, going beyond HTML is easy to start because you have already open sources packages, but it's really hard to scale. We know that JavaScript has increased the cost for us a lot, and documents also is really hard to master. You have to fine-tune a lot of things and requires a lot of patience and stuff like that. I want to talk about a second challenge we had to face at Algolia is rabbit hole. And it's even less clear maybe. It's a made-up word or some kind of made-up word. What I mean by that is it's a hole you get into and you are stuck forever, like Alice in Wonderland. When does that happen? When you're crawling a website? It happens quite often actually. You might have experienced that before. It's when you go to a page and you crawl forever, like an infinite loop of redirection or page duplicating itself infinitely. Two specific examples I want to talk about is query params. You all know what it is, but it's easy to forget that query params can have infinite combination or infinite value or infinite position. URL might be different, but the content is the same. The website knows it's the same. And Google knows it's not the same, but does your crawler know it's the same page? For example, very basic example, two query params are just switched. Do you know it's the same page? We don't, actually. We are not solving this issue. It's pretty hard to master because you have infinite combination and you have to pay attention to every URL you found on a website. Another pretty common problem is infinite pagination. A website is badly configured and you can have infinite page, so you crawl it forever and forever and forever. So just to fix this, there is not so much you can do because it's website bugs, but just providing a few ways to, in your irrelevant query params, order them if possible, but you have to think about when you fetch the URL, when you see it in the website, on sitemaps, on RSS, and add a lot of monitoring. We automate a lot of things to enable this. Another topic I want to talk about is path concatenation. It's also a problem that happens a lot, at least once a week. It's this problem. You might not see it, but it's pretty easy. The web standards allows you to have relative links. For example, here I'm going to example.com and I see a link to hello. So it computes to example.com/hello. My crawler go to this link and I'm finding back the link. So now my new URL is example.com/hello/hello. And you know where it's going. It's going forever and forever and forever until the URL does not fit either on your database or in your memory, or you can simply make the website crash also because it cannot process the URL anymore. It actually happened to us more than once. A lot of websites have these bugs because it's made by human like me, and you know, bugs happens a lot. So one time we had to crawl a website with just a few thousand pages, and we let it run in the night. I'm getting back in the morning, all fresh with my coffee, and I see this 80 million pages crawled in the night with 30 gigabytes of data for nothing. And it probably cost a lot to the customer in bandwidth and stuff like that. So this is a picture of me with my discovery. But here it's all garbage and was dropped later. So the same for query params. You cannot do much about it, but you have to know it happens a lot. When I say every week, is that even yesterday we had the issue with another customer website. So you have to put limits everywhere, monitoring, implement a max depth, like putting say 10s max depth or something like that, just to be sure, because you will have the problem at some point. My last topic, but not the least, is security. You might wonder why security. When you do crawling on your computer, you don't care about security. But when you're building a SaaS and you let customers write their own code, security is becoming a real problem. For example, we let the customer write their own extraction code. It's a bit small, but you see the point. They can use a jQuery-like experience and extract headers, text, whatever. They manipulate the HTML. The problem is that it's JavaScript, and Node.js is not made for security. So when you execute that, you trust the customer, and it's bad. Because on Node.js, you can do whatever you want. With this simple code, I can read the secret and fetch my server and send him the DB password, and in the end, kill the crawler with an infinite loop. So if you trust your customer, you will have bad problems. Fortunately, or not, Node.js provides a VM. First, you think it's a good idea, but it's actually not made for security at all. Might sounds like it, but it's actually not secure. So don't go that way. We tried, it does not work. There is also a simple ways to create a VM, dedicated VM in Docker or Kubernetes, but it does not solve all the issues of permission, what the user can do, require a package or fetch, do a curl, whatever. So we knew what we wanted. It's like security, control, and good performance, because it's business after all. And after months and months of talk, we finally found a great solution. And I'm not selling it, but it's really good. It's Google V8 Isolate code, and more specifically, isolated VM package. So what is it? Google V8 Isolate is actually the code you are all running in your Google Chrome browser. And someone took this code and put it in a package. It's pretty good, and we knew it was production ready because it's used on Google Chrome. There is a lot of trade-off, but it's really good. There is one thing is that it blocks you from doing everything. So you have to bundle all your HTML, your packages, your extraction code, and all your script into one single file, pass it through the isolate code, and you have a secure execution where you control the input, the output, the memory, the CPU. If it crashes, it crashes, but everything is safe. And in the end, you have, hopefully, a JSON. There is this issue. This issue is that it's 10 times slower than non-safe execution. It's a trade-off. We knew it was hard choice to make, but you cannot expect everything to be free. And more than that, we knew it was good because it's used in Google Chrome, but also in Cloudflare for the exact same thing for the cloud computing. And yeah, so that was the hardest challenge we had to solve. And actually, this is the one that we mastered the most. We think it was really hard to achieve, but it was for the good, and it increased the code by a lot, but we are now 100%, 99% sure that it's good. And I think this is the one challenges that made the code really different, and that's it. So what else could I have talked about? Because I choose 3 topics, but it's there is an enormous amount of topics. And we can talk about scalability, but you will have a talk just after that. Log management, data analysis, enrichment, performance, retry strategy, authentication, and stuff like that. Like I said, crawling is really hard, and I had to choose 3. So I hope it was the right 3 ones. Thank you, and don't hesitate to ask any question.
Does anybody have any questions for Samuel? Questions? Do I throw this? Yeah. Okay, I'm scared.
So you have to speak in the microphone we are gonna send you. It's a catch box.
I'm gonna, don't throw it too high.
Throw it.
Fuck is this?
So you have to speak close to the.
Okay. This
Yeah.
is the weirdest thing I've ever seen.
Close.
Um,
Yeah.
Okay, just two questions. Maybe one a quick one about the security part of it. Do you use red teams here at Algolia, like just in general? And the second one is for the crawling infrastructure that you're using. Do you have any specific tools that you are employing for architecture development? Like, I don't know, do you just use text files when you're architecting this crawler thing, or do you use something like formal methods or like UML diagrams or I don't know, state machines or whatever?
Really good question, thank you. I must say I have disappointing answer, probably. For the infrastructure, we are managing by hand, and it's all in Kubernetes. So it's really basic stuff, but it scales pretty well. I hope that's the answer you are looking for. There is nothing like a big infra. We are relying on Kubernetes to scale automatically on CPU or on jobs and whatever. So it's really basics. And for the security, can you repeat the question? Sorry.
If you are using red teams, if you have like some, people that are actually trying to.
Sorry. Yeah, actually, it's pretty good question too, because the team, there is a dedicated team that just started doing pen testing on the system last week. So they are actually trying to push the boundary a lot, and we, for the moment, didn't have any success or failure. I don't know how to say that, but the crawler resists the attack for the moment. So we are pretty happy with it. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Okay. When you run Chrome under Puppeteer, do you actually run all the scripts that are located on a page, or do you discriminate some like Google Analytics, for example, or others?
Yeah, thank you for the question. That's actually what Rendertron is doing. For the basic stuff, it's executing everything. That's why it's so slow, and that's why we are trying to replace it, and with the ad blocker, but also with more restricted whitelisting over what can be executed or not. And it's really a game changer. It takes some time. We are at least 2 weeks in the go for the moment, but it's really a great game changer.
Hand go up. All right.
Hello. At the start of the presentation, you talk about DDoS and protection. What do you have? What process do you have to improve DDoS and not crashing a website in general?
You might surprise how little it needs to crash a website actually, but we have a rate limiting in place. So each customer can specify how much he wants the website to be crawled per second. So a big customer can handle a wide load, so they crawl regularly, like every 12 hours, and we redo like 1 million pages, and they handle the load. Some other customer can handle only 1 pages per second, not more. So they can fine-tune that on their own, and it's simply a queue we are checking in memory. It's really basic stuff, but it's also a game changer. Having that, just a small increment somewhere or a Redis or whatever, it helps a lot because websites are really flaky sometimes.
Cool. Oh, over there.
Thank you. Just a question back on the reason why you're offering a crawler is to build an index for the search engine behind. I was wondering how much do you allow for customization of what will be crawled on the website? As I understood it was a black box at the moment. You're offering the service and you're just saying, give me your site and we'll crawl everything. Is there do you envisage to offer some customization of what can be crawled and have the client do the filtering job for you?
Yeah, thank you for the question. It's a black box for other customers actually. because the customers that are paying, and we wish to open at some point, I hope, but the customers that are paying, they can fine-tune everything, like whitelisting URL patterns, the rate limits, the JavaScript, the file that they want or not, whether they have 100 of subdomains or not. They can change really everything. And like the extraction code, it's all in JavaScript or JSON configuration, stuff like that. So that was the one requirement when replacing GSA, Google Search Appliance. They had an enormous amount of configuration possible, and we wanted to match a bit what they needed, what they wanted with that. So they actually can change almost everything in the system. That's why it's really hard to scale, because for example, we talked about Doc Search at the beginning. This is another team. They are crawling documentation, open source documentation, and it's really straightforward because there are only one use cases, like crawling docs. But we are crawling websites with really different technologies and requirements, and everybody is like changing the stuff. Like almost every day we have a new change and configuration and stuff like that. So I hope someday we will open to everybody, but for the moment only the customer can trick. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, give him a round of applause. He did such a good job.